I'd like to call this Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 review session to order. First piece of business would be we need to appoint a treasurer pro tem for the meeting. Let's see. Dr. Goodwine, would you accept the nomination to be our treasurer pro tem for this evening?
It's an appointment, it's not really my choice, so go ahead.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a vote.
President Smith,
Yes. Yes.
hold on, this ain't my paper.
Do I have to push on
Board Member Sampson,
this?
Board Member Witt Gaye,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine, yes, Board Member Lacy,
Yes.
6 yeses.
6 yeses. Dr. Goodwin will serve as our treasurer pro tem. Dr. Goodwin, may we have a roll call for attendance, please?
President Smith,
Present.
Board Member Reiner,
Is excused.
Board Member Sampson,
Present.
Board Member Witt Gaye,
Yes. Or present.
Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Present.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine, present, Board Member Lacy.
Here.
6 present, 1 excused absence.
You stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Good evening, everyone. We have a few special presentations today. First is a safety and security update from Chief Wright. Dr. Lally, if you can introduce Chief Wright, please.
I'd like to have Chief Wright come up and give us an overview of what the safety and security measures are for this coming school year, and especially focusing on those additional safety and security things that have been put in place. Thank you.
No worries. Sharice, whenever you're ready. I don't know if they're going to be able to see that either.
Can this one be moved?
Our screen's not on yet.
Not sure why we have 3 in here. Thank you.
Let's do this one for now. All right, good deal. All right, good evening, Board President, Dr. Lally, board members. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to present this information. As far as safety and security measures, there are a lot of measures that are introduced within the district. And I am Chief Wright. Let's start over here. You know, click the screen and yeah. All right, I'm Chief Wright, Safety and Security here at Dayton Public Schools. As far as safety and security measures that we have here in Dayton Public Schools, we do have, we actually consider the safety of students and staff as the utmost priority here at Dayton Public Schools. There are dozens of security measures in place to protect schools and prevent harm from occurring. These measures are constantly evaluated to ensure everything possible is done to keep schools a safe and orderly environment where all students can learn grow, and thrive. Some of the updates as far as safety and security staff and personnel, we went from 36 SROs up to 45 SROs. So that's one of the impeccable changes that we had as far as staffing goes within safety and security. There's other elements as far as our 4 quadrant leaders, our 4 school safety liaisons within the district as well, and our 3 security facility monitors who monitor all video traffic and everything dealing with background checks within the district, whether it be staff, employees, or any vendors that come through the actual district. Our transportation crews, of course, that's our TAC units who actually go out and assist transportation with any bus incidents. There's been questions as far as additional law enforcement. We can request additional law enforcement present through Dayton Police Department and the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office at any point in time, at any time during the day. And it's more as needed, of course. As far as district personnel, those security measures, I just mentioned a little bit about the FBI, BCI background checks, and I'm hearing background checks on all employees and all volunteers across the district, our daily updates of employee badges for activation and deactivation. That activation and deactivation piece actually comes from Human Resources, and they're the ones that let us know if someone's badge should be on or should not be on. Once they make that notification via quick email, which is very consistent, that's when we know if someone should be deactivated or someone has been removed from the system. As far as records kept on all employees, as far as badge swipes, if there's any question as to who entered a building, who exited a building, well, who entered a building as far as the badge swipe, and as far as exiting the building, that's more of our camera system. So the camera system actually holds accountability for exits and entries of our actual buildings. As far as restricted building accesses for all employees, specific badges actually have access to the buildings that employees are assigned to. We can actually restrict the hours that the badge are in use. We can restrict the days. If it's a holiday, we can put the building on holiday lock where you can't enter the building at all. So those are some of the actual features that we have with our access control. Master keys are actually regulated through operations. It's a great job that Pete Vlasic takes care of with our operations department and our key guy. Other additional measures that we actually have is our Handle with Care program. Handle with Care is a program that was brought to us by Montgomery County ESC, and we participate in that with the Dayton Police Department, where if there's any incident involving a Dayton Public Schools student, and it's something that happened over the weekend or when we're out of school, they will actually notify us that evening, that day, when it actually occurred via email, so we can kind of keep track of or make sure that the student receives any attention that they would need when they return to school. It's not a call the student out on the carpet and bring it to everyone else's attention. It's just more or less to let them know if they need support, we're there for that support. Behavior threat assessment, that is an actual program, of course, commonly named. Any behaviors that's unusual that comes within the school by a student, that behavior threat assessment is an actual program where you can enter information and it follows the student during the life of that student's enrollment within Dayton Public Schools. If something happens with a student in 4th grade and the student has another incident in 10th grade, excuse me, you can go back and look at that incident to see if it kind of correlates with what's going on with them in the 10th grade and see if the interventions that happen and figure out what we can do to assist the student as well. Safer Ohio Schools tip line, that's an actual tip line to the actual state of Ohio. And that is where anonymous tips can be made dealing with anything within the district as far as, wanting to put out information of something that's going on at school, any rumors that you heard, any allegations of any threats that may be coming about. That information can be received by Safer Schools and Safer Ohio Support, Safer Ohio Schools tip line, and they'll then notify the district or our office as far as what's going on there. Any questions?
Before we get into any questions, I want to first appreciate you for bringing this up. Know that it's one of the utmost important things for us is to make sure we keep our children and our staff and everyone safe, and it's something that not only us as a board, but people in the community, and especially our parents, want to make sure that we're doing that. So I appreciate you bringing this up. Are there any questions from the board? Board Member Lacy.
I'm not sure if I understand what 3 monitors means. Does that just mean, okay.
So the 3 security facility monitors, is that what you're talking about?
So each facility has?
No.
No, okay.
The security facility monitors are the 3 staff members that are down here at Ludlow.
Okay.
They actually work the front desk, the command center, where they do all the badges, badge requests, background checks, and all camera checks for the district.
And so they can see any camera remotely?
They can see every camera in the district, yes.
Okay. Does our security system, does it lock things remotely? Like, do all schools lock down at 9 o'clock or anything like that? Or
All buildings are set, it's bell schedule specific. So if there's a certain time that a principal wants their building to unlock prior to entry or lock at dismissal, though we can set those up to lock. So they're set on a certain bell schedule, but we do make adjustments at request of the building principal.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Anybody else? Dr. Goodwin.
Yes. Okay, so I see on here that you did have on one of your slides that you guys work with the sheriff and police department. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, seeing what happened in Texas, my question for you is, how routinely are you guys working to respond to potential threats that may happen in our school? God forbid that ever did happen, but if it did, do you guys have a protocol? Because I would hate for our district to fall into the debacle that happened there where no one moves.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
since that has happened, has there been any adjustment of that frequency of just trial runs or anything like that?
Okay. So prior to Uvalde, we didn't wait for anything to happen in Texas. So we are a department of preparedness, so yes, we're prepared. But what we do is we do rely on that police resource to actually respond to the buildings upon our call. Our response time has been anywhere from, depending again where they're at in the city, but our response time has been a minimum of 3 minutes, and the longest I've seen was maybe 6 to 7 minutes. But the immediate response is more or less, as soon as we get notification of something, we don't wait. We don't wait. I'd rather call out and make the call in the assumption that something has been alleged or there has been a threat and get them there with us, opposed to waiting to see if something happens.
Okay. So my next question for you is, systems are only as good as when they're utilized. Now, I hear all of our doors can be locked remotely and they have these things on them. What happens when a door is left open? Or someone brings someone in or anything like that?
I'm glad you mentioned the term systems. Any system is only good as the person that's working the system. Any system is only good as the person that's at the building. So if we have people, which we shouldn't have anymore, and that information has gone out or will go out again, no one should be propping any doors at the district, period. I don't care what the time limit is. We put a lot of money into this security system. We put a lot of money into access control. Let people access the building properly. If they're supposed to be there, they'll be able to get in. If they can't get in, they're not supposed to be there, or they need to get somewhere where they can get in and be buzzed into the building. People take security or the upgrades in security as we're trying to make this a police state. That's not what we're doing. I'm trying to make it safe for students. Students and staff, that's all that matters to me. If someone's mad that they can't just walk off the street and walk into our building, you're gonna be mad. You're gonna be mad because the buildings are gonna be secured. All I need is our staff is to continue to do the same thing. Those things we have in place in soft zones, which schools are a soft zone, keep our doors closed, remain secured.
Okay. And in regards to our perimeters, just talking about individuals that shouldn't be in our schools, how are you guys monitoring the perimeters of our different schools?
So it's constant acts of building audits where they actually walk the buildings. Our actual exterior buildings, minus the front doors, all of our exterior doors, middle school, high schools, we do have push bars. So the push bars will set off an alarm which will alert when a door has been opened or a door has been breached. That alarm goes off. We have access to cameras. Cameras will automatically go to whatever zone or whatever door that is to get attention on that area. There's a lot of things going on with the cameras that I'm not gonna talk about, but we're prepared.
Okay, and I got one final question for you. I see we've gone up 9 the safety resource officer?
Security resource, yeah.
Security resource officer.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we right sized based on the incidents that are the trends that we've seen over the last 3 years? Do we need more?
From the 36 where we were, let's go back to when I first started at 17 SROs. 46 is a blessing. It's a blessing. I'm able now to put the total number that the state recommends, just their state recommendations, the FBI, as far as student count, or how many students are actually in the building and staff in the building, how many SROs should be in the location. I'm now at a point where I can put those numbers in those actual buildings.
Okay, you said, is it a blessing? But my question is more so, is it enough?
We are at a point now with 45 SROs. If I said it was enough, that would mean I wouldn't want any more. Now, it's enough for what we have as far as the buildings are concerned, yes. I think 45 is going to be sufficient with the total numbers that I'm trying to put in each building, which is 3 at our high schools, 2 at our middle schools, and then 1 in all of our elementaries. And I've actually been able to put 4 at some of our high schools, 3 at our middle schools, and then the 1 in our elementary schools. So I'm able to put more in the buildings than what I've ever been able to. So I think we're at a number where, yes, we're sufficient.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. Anyone else? So I'll go Board Member Sampson, then Board Member Lacy.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, Chief Wright, thank you to you and your team for all that you do. SROs in Dayton Public Schools, in my opinion, are amazing. They deal with a lot, and so I am very appreciative of the work that you guys do. One of the things that you shared in the slide is 36 of 45 SROs. And I know school starts in 28 days. How close are we to making, and I see there's 3 in human resources, how close are we to making that 45 of 45 by the first day of school?
We are in a process with Mr. Hicks and Ms. Carver. They are diligently working, getting names across my desk, getting people that are great applicants. And the interview process, it just continues. I think at one point we were doing, what, 3 to 4 interviews a day. And we're sifting. We're trying to find the right people. My main focus is more or less those who not are only qualified, but those who are going to be advantageous to the district and to the students of this district as well.
I appreciate that. And Mr. President, one more question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Chief, you shared there's some data out there as it relates to how many personnel per student count and staff. FBI, I think you said. When you get some time, if you could share that with us, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you so
I'll
much.
pull the binder. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lacy.
And returning to like doors locked, and which was a problem at Uvalde. Okay, having a daughter in Dayton Public Schools, and you have to go all the time to school, and I never I've never gone up to a door that's not locked. In fact, I'm not even sure exactly, do they prop them open when it's time to come to school during the coming in hours, or do they unlock them at that time?
As far as propped open?
Or do they, yeah, when like at 8 o'clock, is the door unlocked then?
Well,
Or I'm not even sure.
I appreciate that information. That means there's a building that's doing what they're supposed to do, and they're not propping the doors open.
Well, it's a couple of buildings, and
Okay,
yeah.
good. So basically I don't want to throw any district employees under the bus, but during UPS deliveries, sometime UPS is bringing something to the building and a staff member will help them and they'll prop a door, walk away from the door while
Oh, yeah.
UPS is delivering what they have to deliver. That's unacceptable. Because that split second that door is propped open and someone's either away from the door or on a truck loading up, anyone can get in that building. those are the times. If it takes a couple more seconds from propping a door to closing the door, take a couple seconds. I'd rather the door be secured.
So who unlocks and locks the doors?
As far as
I don't think a lot of people can they? Or
No.
do-
During the course of the day, the actual access control system unlocks the main doors, the front doors, the outer exterior. There's two sets of security at the front doors of our buildings, which is the actual exterior front door and then your inner vestibule door. That's called a secondary breach. So your secondary, people can get into the vestibule, but they can't get into the building.
And so they're probably just unlocked for a short period of time during, when it's time for
Business
children
hours.
to come.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, because in my history, and also I have to, I mean, she goes to after-school programs, and
Okay.
that's always, you're always running into a locked door there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've never seen like a door
That's
just
excellent.
unlocked,
That's excellent.
but that's my experience. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Les.
I have a question, Mr. President, if that's okay.
Dr. Pickett.
Can you talk a little bit more about the ALICE training that your SROs go through, please?
Okay. So the actual ALICE training, not only do they go through the ALICE training, the SROs here, the majority of the department, minus the newer employees, they're all actual ALICE certified instructors as well. So the ALICE training, it really teaches survival. That's basically what it teaches. And the main thing that we want our students and staff to understand is that they can participate in their own survival. Don't wait for someone necessarily to tell you what you have to do.
Any other questions? I had a couple. So when we talk about these systems, Chief, you know, if a door is left open when it's not supposed to, or propped open for somebody in delivery and somebody, do you have, and you don't have to dive all into them and, you know, tell things that are, you know, things that we don't want getting out. But do we have measures in place for if those things happen where, you know, if a door is left open, do we have something to, you know, if that happens, do we have something that then comes into play?
So generally, yes, the exterior doors, all the exterior doors at buildings, now the system, if it's left open for a period of time, we actually have tones, or where it'll actually tone or send off an alarm. It's an annoying alarm, which kind of notifies, hey, there's been a door left open or there's a door ajar.
Okay, and then we talked about the Handle with Care program, dealing with the different law enforcement. Are there other groups that our district is talking to where, you know, mental health or group homes that are working with children, different agencies that are not law enforcement? Are there any conversations with those to kind of give any heads up or any information about things that are going on in our community that could bleed back into our schools?
Yes, through Ohio Safe Schools, we do participate in any trainings that they would give as far as, you know, adolescent mental health, things of that nature. Yes, we do participate in Ohio Safe Schools. And whatever they send us as far as notifications, also Montgomery County ESC, they send us information as well for trainings that we can go through with them. I always uptrain. I uptrain my staff. I make sure they have the best in training, and I send them to every training that I can send them to.
Okay. And then lastly, for people in our community, if someone has any information that they would want to pass on to safety and security, or they've seen some things, or they heard something, or their student told them something, what are the steps that you would want to give to our parents and community members about how to handle those kind of things when they hear things that are, you know, concerning to them?
So it's a big slogan, and I don't want to use it just as a slogan or a cliche, but if you see something, say something. Tell us, call us, 937-542-7000. That's safety and security. Call your building, get in touch with your building SROs. If you see a blue shirt, I'm giving all the thanks to the blue shirts that are at these buildings, because those are the ones that are on that initial front line getting most of the information. So if you see a blue shirt, tell them. Don't be opposed to walking up to them and letting them know what's going on, letting them know what you may have heard. Even if you thought you heard it, let us know. That's it. Definitely let us know firsthand.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments while we have Chief Wright? If there are none, I'm going to thank you, sir, and appreciate what you all and your team do for the district.
Thank you. Appreciate you all.
Dr. Lally, if you could introduce our next update, please.
Yes, the next update is about the international school. We have Rachel Murdoch, Stacy Maney, and Rachel Ward here with some information.
Okay, so good evening, Board President Smith, board members, Superintendent Lally. I believe you have the presentation in front of you. Is that correct? All right, so we're just going to start with some enrollment numbers. On the first slide, you will see the current enrollment for EL students. We currently have 257 EL students enrolled, and I'll give you a second just to look at the breakdown of grade levels as you scan those columns. And those numbers have been going up pretty steadily. Even as of Monday, we just had a little over 200, so those have been increasing at a pretty steady rate. On the next slide, you'll see the current enrollment of the Resident Park neighborhood students. We currently only have 23 students registered from the neighborhood. Now, we have taken multiple efforts to get those students registered and get them interested in coming back to Residence Park. We've sent letters to the residents that have school-age children. We've made targeted robocalls to those homes so that they know about the new school and the new program. SROs have actually hand-delivered applications door-to-door to those families. We also open enrollment to non-DPS students who are at charter schools currently. We had 3 DPS staff members attend the Residence Park Festival. They were also giving out applications and information through informational flyers. And we invited the Residence Park president and vice president to also support recruiting. So we've put some effort into recruiting those students, but as of this time, we just have 23 neighborhood students registered.
And with this enrollment, we, of course, in Human Resources have been working to staff this new building and have had seen some success already with 18 teachers hired. 8 teaching positions are currently still vacant, which are being filled on a daily basis. We're constantly working towards that goal. Additionally, important to note for the international schools, the bilingual staff, because we've put a emphasis on finding staff members with those skills, with that skill set. So we have 10 teaching staff positions with bilingual abilities and 8 support staff within the building. So that should be a great resource for our families and students at that building.
Good evening. And last but not least, just to give a quick update on kind of the planning and how everything is going. Operations and everyone are working very diligently to get the building prepared and ready for August. Classrooms, common spaces have been cleaned. Desks and chairs are being set up. It's going very quickly. The classrooms looked super beautiful the last time I was over there. And we are inviting teachers to come start getting their classrooms ready in August. The principal is working diligently to get school supplies, signage, and other materials ordered for the building. And we are reviewing curriculum materials that may need to be ordered yet, and 712 courses are being finalized and set so we can get the materials from the warehouse moved over for them as well. And I think that was all we had for this evening.
Thank you all for that presentation. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a
Mr.
question.
Lacy first, then Dr. Pickett.
And of the 18 bilingual staff, do you have any idea how many languages we're talking about?
A minimum of 6 to 8.
We have Spanish, we have Farsi, we have Kinyarwanda, Swahili, French, and Swedish.
Okay.
That one was a bonus.
And they're all just bilingual? There's Africans speak French and a local language. Okay. All right, thank you.
Dr. Pickett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Looking at the numbers of the EL students enrolled, how many of these are live? Because I see that the ninth grade we have more, probably it's because of that. From the other grades, how many are actually coming with interrupted education, if we know that number?
As we go through the assessment process, when the students are at the building, I would hope to have that number, so maybe September-ish.
Thank you. Dr. Goodwin?
Yes, I have a couple questions about this recruitment. So, can you tell me a little bit how we recruited the EL students?
So we created a list of students who were recommended by EL staff or other building staff in some situations, who would need that newcomer services, and a list of students who enrolled late in the year as newcomer students. And we worked with bilingual staff to call those families and discuss the new school and the possibility of moving their child over there for this upcoming year. And since then, we have been working with enrollment and a set of criteria on which families would be eligible to enroll to that new school as they're coming in as well.
Okay. I have questions about the advertisement that I've seen out, because I've only seen 3 pieces on Facebook itself. I haven't seen any on Instagram, but I didn't look that hard, and I haven't seen any in my Google ads or that. But on one of the advertisement, and this may be a question for you, Dr. Lally, and not this team, there is a line that states that if enough non-English speaking students don't enroll in the school, that portion wouldn't be open. And my question is, when was that decision made? And what is that number?
I actually put that on that recruiting form because I didn't want to have parents withdraw their students from charter schools, lose their spot, in case we didn't have enough students to open up. We've tried through Chief Murdoch, we have 23. We have 23 students, and we've tried to look at, can we combine those into K1-2s? Can we combine them into 3-4-5s? Can we combine them into clusters and try to start off with that? We also talked about the fact, could the English students move into the EL classrooms, and what would that look like with the numbers, because we could actually facilitate that. But we have concerns about the curriculum being slowed down for those students potentially, or the fact that they would be the only students left, and every year up through their 6th grade, they would have to have a new class of students that came in because the ELs only stay there 1 year. So we talked about a couple of different arrangements on that. There's also an option that the district could redistrict next year and open up Residence Park as an elementary school. There are about 76 students right now that do not have siblings in other buildings that could go to this particular building, but those are families that we've already reached out to. But perhaps next year you could redistrict whenever you have more time to alert the families that the redistricting is it's now open up officially as this kind of school, because you would have a whole year to be able to do that and facilitate that. So we talked about all those kinds of options. We don't even have full class sizes at this point, because we don't have any 3rd graders at all, if I remember correctly. We have a handful of, it's on here. We have 11 students that would go into a K1-2, and we have only 12 students that would go into a 4-5-6. So it's dependent upon whether or not we want to put that in place with that small number of students, or whether or not we try some other efforts for next school year.
So I can't speak for my other board members, but I know it was extremely important that this school opened up as a combined effort of our international children and children from here, because we didn't want to give the appearance that we were giving preference or doing something and excluding kids. And I know it was extremely, like Dr. Pickett worked very hard on this program. So if there is an option of one of the things that you just stated, because I don't think the school, for myself, we can't open this school without that other half, because that's what this board committed to as a whole. And just figuring out which one of those are the strongest way for us, because if it is a K through 2, or if that is the option that we're going to, something like that, that has to happen for us to really continue to stand behind this project, especially the location and the fact that this is the only school that children are actually being bused into. I mean, there are a lot of variables that second half has to be present for us to continue with our path towards equity for children in our district. That's all I had.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. That response did give me a question, Dr. Lally. If that option of, we're talking about changing and reconstituting a building, in the reconstitution of a building, what would happen to the international component that we're talking about today?
I would not reconstitute the building. What I would do is redistrict the school boundaries. So
Okay.
when you redistrict the school boundaries, you automatically, and I don't want to use the word force, but you automatically require those families that live within that new boundary to attend that particular
That school.
Correct.
Okay.
And with only 28 days left before school actually starts, I'm not sure that would be a productive thing to do. If it's the board's will to open up a K-1-2 with 11 students for one class, we can do that. And the 12 students for the 4, 5, 6 for this school year, and then redistrict for next year and let everyone know ahead of time that you're redistricting and that your students' new school will be this particular school.
Okay. Another question I had, when we're talking about the Residence Park area, are we talking about just the neighborhood of Residence Park, or how wide of a net are we at now that students could attend the school?
Yeah, we expanded to what you asked us to expand to with our
Okay.
recruiting efforts. So I think that if you redistricted, you would take a look at that and see how far those boundaries went for that particular school, and what you have to do like a pin map, see how many students are in that area, see if the school has capacity for it. Just take a look at that whenever you do that.
Okay. And when is the enrollment period up for this school?
We haven't closed it off at all.
Okay, appreciate that. Any other questions from the board? I will go to Board Member Sampson first, then I'll swing it back over to Dr. Goodwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for this presentation. I do have a couple questions. Is it safe to assume that the 257 enrolled students mostly will be transported cross quadrant?
We haven't looked at that specifically. We could get that information to you.
Okay. And this school is 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I know you gave the information about the bilingual staff. I'm requesting that if you could give the languages spoken by those individuals, the staff, and also the languages of the 257 EL students that are currently enrolled, would be great for me. I'll say this, I'm not so sure, and I'm not saying that I'm looking at the recruitment strategies. I don't know, one of the things that is a caution for me is when I see we sent SROs to knock on doors. In my community, anything that is perceived as authority is a turnoff initially, especially if there's no relationships. And I'm not saying that there was no effort given. What I am saying is that is potentially, that could have been a different approach. What that approach is, I don't know. But it is something to consider. Last question. Out of the 257, I see that, how are these classes, when I see a first grade class of 43, is that going to be 2 individual classes of 21 and 122? How does that break up for the larger classes to make sure we're meeting the needs of the EL students?
Sure. So based on the student enrollment numbers shared, we will have 2 preschool kindergarten groups, 2 first grades, as you mentioned, that's a larger group, 1 second grade, 1 third grade, and then 1 fourth, 1 fifth, and 1 sixth equally.
Okay. And one more question, if I may, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. The assessment that is given to the students, because I do recognize it has been, the goal is that this is a year, and for some, it may be longer. Is the assessment given to see what the needs are? Because some of these 257, especially for our older youth, may be leaving in 5 months, in 6 months, that can reduce this number to 257. Is that assessment given the first day of school to determine the needs, or do we know those needs now?
So if any of the students were here during the annual English language proficiency exam assessment, which happened in February to March, we would have some data on them already. Otherwise, when school starts, we have a 30-day window where we have to give the screener exam, and then that would give us information on all of our incoming kids.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
No
President.
problem.
Thank you. Dr. Lally?
Just to respond about the SROs, if no one answered the door, they left the letter and they left the application. So we tried to, if they didn't feel comfortable opening the door, to leave that there so they could read it and see it. And then secondly, about the busing, and Dr. Burton, correct me if I'm wrong, the newcomer elementary students will be picked up on the Montessori route. That's why they're at 9 o'clock. So the Montessori routes go all around the district. They will drop those students off at the Montessori school. They'll get on a shuttle and come over to the newcomer school.
Got it. Thank
So
you
that's the reason for the 9 o'clock start.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Goodwin?
Yes. I have 2 questions for you. I just heard you say preschool, but I don't see preschool on the chart at all. I see kindergarten.
Yeah, we do not have preschool numbers yet, but we do anticipate having some preschool students, so they'll be combined with the kindergarten
Okay.
students.
For in the neighborhood students, there are about 5 daycares in that area, but that's probably a really good opportunity to get some of those children into the preschool program there. So I don't know if you guys knew that, but if you didn't, that's probably an area to really heavily recruit, because we know that early childhood education is major for success afterwards. My second question for you is more so tailored to the 48 high school students. Will these students, because they're here for a year, is that correct? So if any of them play any athletics, are you going to code them to the schools where they're located, or to Thurgood Marshall? And my only question for you to that one is, because we don't run our athletics program as far as jurisdiction, if they have to transfer back and they play athletics, it's going to disrupt their ability to play. So in consideration of, if they go to the Residence Park School and they play at Thurgood, then that practice is going right over there, versus if they go here, or they go to Belmont, or they're going back to Stivers or Ponich or something like that. I mean, taking that into consideration, if they are an athlete, that whatever school that you're coded to is the school that you have to play at, and you have to sit out the next year if you did have eligibility and you played that 1 year. And I know that that's, for some people, for some kids, that is something that keeps you going. So how are you guys handling that?
Yeah, so they would play at their home school. They would not play at Thurgood.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be an issue with eligibility. You're right, that's very important to many students.
Okay. One more question for you. Because if they get out at 4, what time does high school get out?
High school gets out at 3.
Okay. How would that play into these students' schedule if they're having to travel across for them to be able to participate?
Actually, the secondary part of the school could start early like Stivers does and be dismissed early,
Okay.
earlier.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that's just something to keep in mind
Right.
if these kids are doing anything else and they're on another school schedule, that they're going to be excluded if they're not, if that isn't at the forefront of their day. That's all I had.
Mr.
Thank you.
President, can I ask-
Dr. Lally?
If I could have a, kind of some direction from the Board of Education about the regular English-speaking students, do we want to go with 11 students in K-1-2 with one teacher and 12 students with the 4, 5, and 6, just so we can get it staffed and we can get those teachers, you know, on the team so they can be part of the building? So if we can have some direction and hope that more kids come during the year, but if the kids don't, then we would have those small classrooms for 1 year, and then the board consider a redistricting to make those classrooms 20 or whatever.
So I would like to see preschool added to that side as well. Because I know we probably could fill preschool more. I mean, I think it's a conversation for everyone else on here. I mean, if these individuals have signed up for it, that means their families have already made the adjustments to go to this school.
They have already signed up, for it. We
Right,
have their
so-
applications.
And
Yeah.
that would be my thing, is that these families have already said they're buying in. So I think it would be incumbent of us to figure out how to accommodate that within reason. So I'm all for doing whatever we can and, you know, making sure those successes and pouring into these children as well. So I would be for opening up, just to make sure that that is what we're doing. And to echo Dr. Goodwine's point from earlier, I think it's in spirit of what the board voted on to open up the school as. Any other comments from the board?
And actually, after Mr. Smith brought up the point about if we didn't have enough, we removed that from our Facebook and our postings. Is that correct, Ms. Kincaid? Yeah. So we removed that so people wouldn't,
It's still on the
Still-
July 7th one, because I just looked it
still
up.
on what?
The July 7th posting, so you may want to go back and edit that one.
Okay. Okay, and go back and remove, please, from all the other ones too, in case somebody looks back. Thank you, Mr. President.
No problem. Anything else for anybody that we have up here, or Dr. Lally on this subject? See nothing else? I'm going to thank you all for your hard work and appreciate you, and look forward to hearing more updates.
Thank you.
And Dr. Lally, the last presentation, please.
Last presentation is on the bell schedule and the transportation, the way that things are working. We had a question about what were the alternatives, so Dr. Burton will be reviewing the alternatives that we received from suggestions from board members as well as others. And as she's coming up to the podium, the reason the bell schedule turned out the way that it is the schools that are on the earliest start time, they are neighborhood school centers and have 21st century grants. So they need a full 3 hours after the school day in order to do the 21st century tutoring. So they're on the earliest time, and hopefully we'll be able to get a bus back to pick those students up and take them home if everything goes well with the rest of the routing that's been achieved. We've been trying to do activity buses now for the last 2 years, and hopefully we'll be able to facilitate that this year. The second tier are high schools, and the reason they're on that second tier is because of sports. So they get out around 3 o'clock. They don't have to stay from 2 o'clock or 1:30 until a game that they might be transported at the beginning at 4, or a game that starts at 5. So they can stay there, and they don't have as long. They can participate in study tables and then go to their athletic event. And then the last tier were those schools that really didn't have something significant that would warrant them being on one of the other tiers. So that's how the schools were decided for that, based upon their after-school programming, based upon athletics. So Dr. Burton, if you could go through and review, please. Thank Thank you.
Good evening, Board Member, President Will Smith,
You're fine.
Board Members, Superintendent Lally. So I'm going to, along with the Executive Director of Transportation, we're going to go over the process by which we developed the routes and how we arrived at the routes we have today.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
just a quick correction to the bell schedule. It lists Stivers School of the Arts 7 to 12 from 9 to 4. And I think they meant, it says Stivers School for the Arts Middle School 7 to 12. Stivers School for the Arts Middle School is 7 to 8.
Correct.
So 9 to 12, we'll make that correction, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy.
Okay, so Sharice, if you go to the first slide. So each slide that we're going to present subsequent to this one, we will outline the date and then the request that was made on that date, the additional work hours it took to complete the request, the number of routes that were the result of the change made based on the request, the number of drivers it would have taken to fulfill that request, the active number of drivers we have currently employed, and then what the concerns were. So we're going to outline for you the activity that we did for the month of January through June and how we developed the schedule that we have today. I'm going to ask the Executive Director of Transportation to come up now to review with you the process that we went through.
Good evening, President
evening.
Will Smith, board members, and Dr. Lally. Superintendent, sorry. So the first one I'm going to go over with you guys is we were asked to investigate a hub in January, in early January. So as we started investigating that, I got involved with ODE because I found out that K through 8th they can only walk 0.50 miles from their residence. So that we had hubs all over where all the parents would bring their kids to a hub. So we found that any kids that were walking, would not be able to go to those hubs because they would be considered too far out for them. So at that time, this was in January, this would have gave us 142 routes altogether, 142 routes. That would have been that's 117 DPS and 25 special need routes. And with your extra board drivers, that would have been 162 drivers altogether for that. And at that time, I had 112 active drivers. I have 78 out on leave. So technically, with those concerns, I wouldn't have had enough drivers. So then we moved to February, and we looked at multi-schools, putting multi-school pickups together. So when I mean multi, I mean like Cherry Adams and Fairview. Putting those two schools on a bus, they'd all meet at their bus stops and put those two schools on a bus and take them to their schools. So that brought us down to 107 regular routes and 25 special need routes, which was 132. And with our extra board drivers, that would have been 147 drivers I would have needed to accomplish that. And also, I still didn't have enough drivers. So then we came to March. And during March, we started looking at trying to figure out like a 3-tier during March and April. So we were trying to work out a 3-tier, and we started working that out, but it only gave us 30 minutes in between routes, which did bring our route numbers down, which would have brought us down to 104 total routes. And with the extra board, that would have been 134. With the 3-tier, bell schedule had school starting at 8:30. So at this point during February or March and April, during this time, we was in the process with First Student. We couldn't come up with an agreement, so then we had to take the charter schools on also. So with that being said, we also had the 3-tier together, but we were instructed that no schools could start before 7 a.m. and no schools after 8:30. So that would have gave us 115 routes at that time, doing it that way, with 30 to 40 minutes in between the routes. So it would have been a total of 135 drivers altogether with the extra board. At that time, I still had 112 active drivers. So I didn't have enough drivers, and then we dropped preschool and we dropped high school. And we moved, in May, we created a 2-tier. We had to move the first, I want to say the neighborhood schools to the 1st tier because of the after-school programs. So we moved those to the 1st tier. So then we only had 2 tiers, which gave us 125 routes, 30 to 40 minutes in between. That was an average of 145 drivers, still at 112 active drivers. So with this one, we didn't have enough, the drivers didn't have enough hours. We were trying to get the drivers more hours, and we still didn't have enough drivers, and the routes were really tight. And that concerned me because of the House Bill 110, of staying in compliance, because there was like no wiggle room whatsoever during that time. So then in June, we were asked to go back to a 3-tier, similar to the one in March, add the international school, and the outer quadrant for Horace Mann and Ruskin. So we didn't get to implement a full hub situation, but we do have, I call it a prototype. We have Horace Mann and Ruskin. That's our hubs right now. The children will come, we take them to the schools, so they're kind of like a hub. They'll meet at certain schools, and then we take them to the schools that they're supposed to be at. And then the international school, it's kind of the same, but it's more of like, trying to think of the word I want. Sorry. It's more of like a shuttle. That's the word I want to use. So it's kind of like the hub, but we're shuttling them from, the buses are bringing all the kids to the 2 schools, and then from there, there'll be 2 buses that take those children to the international school. And then at 3:30, we will pick them up from the international school so we can get them back to the schools that they would normally catch the buses at. So we've tried to work a little bit of everything in, and at this point, we have 96. Right now, we have 96 routes, including special ed and the county routes, and that's non-DPS, and we have an hour in between. So it's 7, 8, and 9. Requires me to have 116 drivers. I have 112 active, but I also have, I also have 11 new to be boarded, and I also have 11 trainees in the process. Most of the routes are anywhere between 6.5 to 7.5 hours. And I'm also, we do have the after-school programs. So we are working, like I'm working on trying to put the wash crew, another wash crew in during the year so they can get their 40 hours. Plus the after-school programs, that's extra work. We couldn't add that to a route because with a contract, that's extra work. So everybody will have a chance to do those after-school programs to get to their 40 hours. I think that's all I have. Sorry.
Mr. President, may I?
Dr. Lally?
With the hubs for Ruskin and for Horace Mann, can we talk about why we're going to have hubs for Ruskin and Horace Mann, and how those hubs actually work and what the parents could do if they choose to use that instead of dropping their children off at Horace Mann Cross Quadrant or Ruskin Cross Quadrant? So we have buses, we have shuttle buses sitting at the northwest, southwest school. Parents can drop their child off either to the Horace Mann bus at the southwest school or the Ruskin bus if they're a Ruskin student Those students are then transported across the district and dropped off at Ruskin in time for school or Horace Mann, if it's the Horace Mann bus, to Horace Mann. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then the parent will pick the students up at the hub stop and take them home from there. So if a parent can't drive across the quadrant, they have the two hubs that we've set up. Horace Mann and Ruskin have the most students currently enrolled cross-quadrant. That's why why we're going to try this. Is that all correct?
That is
Thank
correct.
you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Did you want to go to the bell schedule, or did you want to, do any board members have questions right now before we go into the bell schedule conversation? Mr. Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Executive Director, and Ms. Burton, for the work that you've done so far. I have, and I know Mr. President only allows us to do a few questions, so I'm trying to figure out the questions that I want to ask now.
You know you can ask as many as you need, sir.
All right, thank you. And this is just transportation, because we're not talking about bell schedules, correct?
Correct.
Correct, all right. So the average time now, how many bus drivers do we have, transportation specialists do we have right now?
112.
112.
And we have 11 new ones to be boarded and 11 that's in training.
So
Are these
that,
the same 11?
No,
Different.
it's different. 22 altogether, I'm sorry.
so this could possibly take us to 133 bus
Yes.
drivers? Okay. And the average time that our bus drivers will be driving, is it still 6 hours, or will they go to the 8?
6.5. Some of the routes are 6.5 to 7.5 right now. You also have to understand that we are constantly getting people enrolling, so it can change as we go.
All right, and then you brought up House Bill. So with us transporting our youth, can we still be fined if we don't get them in a certain amount of time?
Absolutely,
And does that include non-pub students as well?
absolutely.
And are we saying we are equipped to handle all of that?
I'm going to do my best.
Okay. And then there's something you said, and I'm trying to wrap my mind around. I'm a very visual guy.
Okay,
So there are individuals who are going to be transported from one school to go to the international school, and then they're going to be transported back to the school, get off one bus to get on another bus to go home?
so what we will do is everybody that's going to be going to that school, they'll be transported in. They'll get onto the bus that takes them to the international school. So they'll be at their bus stops, and then they'll get on the bus at their bus stops. They'll go into 2 of the schools. They'll get onto those buses, and then we'll take them to the international school.
And do you know what the time, and I'm asking because this is Ohio, so we have weird traffic sometimes and weather. How close is this transition? Like, is there enough time that if a bus driver was late from the international school, will this bus at the other school have to leave? Like, how will we ensure that these students will get home in a timely manner,
So your international school is 9 to 4,
right?
and we're picking the students up at 3:30. We're
Okay.
going to be at the international school, picking those children up at 3:30, because we have to get them back so they can get onto their buses. So there'll be 2 buses already there waiting.
So they're losing 30 minutes of academics every day? Okay. And then the last question, there was a statement made that ODE says K through 8 .5 to walk. They have
Yes,
to
to
walk
any bus stop.
to
a
any bus stop, but they're telling us you got to have 1.5 miles away from the school to get transportation?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Dr. Goodwin?
I'm gonna pick up on the last comment that Board Member Sampson, from the first one, when you guys, I think you said it was 100-something hubs that you guys came up with. I may have made that number up. Did you work with any other organizations around us that would be, what was the distance, 1.5, was it?
It's .5. yeah.
0.5. Did you work with any other, or have you looked at any other organizations to serve as those places for people to come into?
Are you talking about the hub stops?
Yeah, when you were in the January
Yes,
month.
well, we were trying to do all the hub stops, like at the schools, like at the charter schools and at our schools. And then I think there were like 2 hospitals we were looking at.
So no community centers, no churches, nothing in the actual communities we didn't look at,
We just looked around.
okay?
It was mostly just the schools that we were
My
trying.
second question for you is because, and I guess this goes, it may not be for you because I believe Dr. Burton mentioned the bell schedule first. On this bell schedule, how many of these schools are new to that program that requires us to give them 3 hours after school?
So the neighborhood schools, they're not new to the program. Many of them have already had the program, but they were on a later bell, and they asked that they be moved to an earlier bell. Most of the schools are the neighborhood school centers.
Were these the principals or the parents who were asking for this?
Principals is my understanding, because they needed, in their grants, they needed 3 hours after school. So putting them at the 4 o'clock would mean the kids would be there until 7. So we wanted to move them all up. We'd have plenty of time for their after-school program and plenty of time for drivers to pick them up.
Prior to making these moves, did your team hold any town halls with the parents of these students to see how that would disrupt their lives?
No, we did not.
Do you see how that's problematic?
Well, I guess our concern was making sure that the buildings were able to meet their obligations per their grant with ODE that said that they would provide after-school programming.
So we don't have any concern for parents being able to
Yes, we
get
do.
their kids there?
Yes, we do have concerns with
Because
parents.
I've received several complaints about this bell schedule, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is new since you said that they received grants, but parents having to adjust their lives to get their kids now in there where they may have had an earlier or later stop time, and to hear that we didn't do any forms to hear from parents as this was a consideration is very disheartening. And I think it's very disrespectful to our parents to not take their voice into consideration when it came to making such a change, knowing what's going on.
While I'm not offering an excuse, it has not been uncommon for us to change bell times per the need of the building based on their grant requirement. So taking that into consideration, we took that into consideration. We removed the time, but based on what you have just indicated, I can work with the superintendent and get feedback from parents.
I mean, just as a courtesy to treat them like people, to actually talk to them. I mean, I think the disruption comes when you just hear via social media or a letter that got to change everything, figure it out, you guys just go with it. And I just think that hurts our customer service to our parents, and they are our customers. They are a part of this district. And I mean, again, just really start considering when we make these type of changes that disrupts not only that child, but the individuals who are responsible for getting those children here. Adding them to the conversation isn't too much to ask before these things. And even talking to them about why you have to do these type of things would probably mend a lot of relationships when it comes to that.
Agreed and duly noted.
My next question, back to you, Ms. Price. Are we set up, on day one, our routes, are we gonna be good to go? Have people run through these things? Do people know what's going on? Like,
Okay, because route picks are Monday.
So route pick is on Monday. They have Monday afternoon, they have Tuesday afternoon, or Tuesday, all day Tuesday to run routes. Routes are ready to go. We've had them up since last Friday, so everybody could come in and look at them and choose. Also, I wanted to speak on the after-school programs. We also decided to take those children home door to door after that program, because due to the wintertime and it getting dark, we didn't want to leave kids at a bus stop. So we thought it would be best to, anybody that's in the after-school programs, to be dropped off at their homes
Okay.
instead of being left at a.
Okay, so you said, and I'm not a bus driver, so I don't know what it means when you say route picks. Can you give me a little bit more on what that means?
Okay, so we posted all the routes on the board with how many hours they are, if they're special needs, if they're just regular routes. And then they'll come in Monday, and they'll bid on, the highest seniority person will bid, and then the routes just kind of go out like that.
Okay. From the parent perspective, for our new, because I'm sure we have some people, this would be the first time that they've ever put their child on our bus. How are we communicating with those, with just the parents in general, of how to be successful on riding the buses this year?
Well, I do believe we have a letter. We have a letter that's going out that's going to have their stop, their bus times, what bus they're going to be riding, because we're trying to wait until after route picks so they'll know exactly what bus. There'll also be a robocall going out to parents too. And then I believe that we're putting a paper in telling them exactly what they can do, and that the parents should be at the bus stop for the kindergartners and stuff like that. We're trying to lay everything out for them.
Does the bus app still work that I know was used in prior years?
No, we got a new one.
Okay.
It was going to be Ride 360. It's still through Tyler Technologies, but they're calling it K through 12th, I think. And they'll have all that information, and it's going out in all the 3 of the languages.
If I may suggest, putting out some videos of how to utilize that app for individuals
I
who may not be.
do believe they have a video, and they have the pamphlets that go
Okay.
with that.
And I just have one final question. And this is regarding our high school students who will be taking the RTA, I believe, this year. What are we doing to prepare those children for riding the RTA?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're actually filming a video we've contacted RTA. We're filming a video. Is the filming Thursday or Friday?
It's actually next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. Filming a video with students actually, one of our students is narrating it, and they're actually going to show how to read the maps, how to board the buses, how to find their stops, all of that kind of information. And then we're going to share that at orientations with our students, and then we'll also post that. But RTA has been working very closely with us to make sure that our students know how to do the routes with us. They're supportive of that. So that's what we've been doing. Say again?
And then we're going to be encouraging students to try it out on
Oh, yes, on a
Saturday,
Saturday, they
because
have
Saturdays
free.
will be free. They'll have the information, and then they can practice riding the bus on Saturday before school starts.
Okay, I know I said that was my last question, but I have one last suggestion. With that process right there, they use apps now, not necessarily paper anymore on the RTA, but I would hope that you were encouraging some of the individuals in our area, like their coaches or any mentors or any other thing, to actually get out there with the students, because it can be intimidating if you've never ridden a bus. Final question, when are they going to get their bus passes?
We have ordered the bus passes, and they will get them, I believe the August ones will be the first week in August.
So I don't want to should we put out there what RTA has? Okay. So I think Dr. Lally will share with you an executive session where we plan to do that first week with RTA. But the bus passes will be in schools the first day of school. But she'll share with you an executive session how students will be able to ride the bus prior to them receiving the bus
That was
passes on
concerning
the
to me.
first
If you
day.
said it was
Yeah.
in school the first day of school, I'm like, how do they get
Yeah.
there?
We have a plan.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, Ms. President.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, first, I do have just one. I do think that just in the information that you're sharing, I think that is one of the things where we do talk about how can we just, that communication gap. And I know that's one of those things where, you know, parents ask, why is this changing? But they don't know the other pieces. They don't know that, you know, after school, we're trying to do door-to-door stops. And it helps with then them spreading it, where if a parent goes, well, this is why we're doing it. So I'd appreciate you giving us that information. I do have a question about routes, and I understand that by state, we can have them up to a half of a mile. Are we trying to, are we looking at the children looking at our weather, looking at the areas, because that still is a very, very, very far distance, and understanding that, are we trying to not cross busy intersections? Are we trying to look at areas where, there's areas, we just had a community meeting in Dayton View where, I think Lexington, Rosedale, Oxford areas where the streetlights are really dark. Like those kind of pieces, are we looking at that, or do we even know on average how far the distance is? Or do we have many routes where kids are walking that 0.5 miles to get there, especially being that from that first to third, fourth grade range? So if you can answer that, like where are we at with the average distance from a child's house to their stop?
So I'm going to answer quite a few of those in there. So basically, when our drivers do their dry runs and stuff, usually they'll tell us if they're on a restricted street, if it's not a safe street, if it's 4 lanes. If a parent calls in, I send my team out, myself or one of my other directors or supervisors. We'll go out and look, we'll go to the person's house and we'll go from there and go to the stop just to make sure that it is safe if they do have concerns. And then we kind of rule on it from that point. I'll be honest, they've dropped children off 2 houses from it, and they were telling me that it was unsafe. So we always go out and check. Even when first student, we did it for first student. They would say there was a complaint, and I would send my team out because bottom line, they're our students, so.
So once our drivers do their route pick and they get their truck, so when will they do their dry runs after they do route pick? Do they have those dates already set up?
The 25th and the 26th
Okay.
is their dry runs.
And then if there are concerns about the routes from what they see on that, what would be the turnaround on that? If there
Fixing
is
them?
a fix that needs to be done on those routes?
Immediately. As soon as they
Okay.
turn those in, we'll have them fixed.
Okay.
And then on the first day of school, they'll get a new route sheet. They're to use their tablets, but you should always have a paper route sheet in the book. There'll also be a cell phone usage, an accident for the new, because we do have a lot of new employees starting. So we're trying to set up folders where everybody has a folder
Okay.
with everything they may need.
Appreciate that. Are there any other questions? Mr. Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 questions, if I may. In this, and Dr. Burton, you could probably answer this, in this planning of the routes, were drivers, supervisors included in this process, or was this just, how was this?
They're included when they do the dry runs. So the routers create the routes, and then drivers are then given the routes. They drive the routes and give us their feedback at that point, and then we make the adjustments to that route and give them back the route sheet. So that's how they're included in the process.
So they're not in the initial process?
Correct, because they would know how to route the addresses. We do that through a computer software program
Got it.
that looks at the city map and determines what's the best stop for the kids that live in this area, find a central stop. And then we actually then have the drivers then go out to verify that that is indeed the case or make whatever changes that they deem necessary, and then we go back in and change it in the system.
Got it. And are our routers the same individuals who are also routing for another company as well?
So our routers are outsourced routers. They were routing for us last year, as well as they routed for our charter schools last year, and we're using the same routers this year.
Got it. And then the last question, if a scholar loses a bus pass, what happens?
We'll be providing high school principals with the bus passes and some additional passes in case a student happens to lose their bus pass. So they'll have additional passes.
Is it a possibility that they would run out of extra bus passes and this student and family now would have to pay for their own pass?
We have not determined, I think that would be a board decision, how many times we'll give a person a pass. We just need to know what that is so we know how to order. How many we need to order over the amount that our records show that the building needs. We know we're going to order over that amount. But if the board determines that a student can lose 3 passes, and then get a fourth one, I think that's the board's decision, so we know how to order passes.
Thank you, Dr. Burton. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And then I just only have one more. Are there any charters or parochials that we are not providing transportation to?
Yes, there are 4. First Student has taken them.
Okay, so,
They've got a contract with them. And then we have 4, we also have 4 that, not the schools, but we ruled the children impractical to transport, because they're like 20 kids that go to the school that actually want transportation. So at that point, we have to look at how many drivers we have, how many students are actually needing transportation, and then we're looking at what the cost is to the district on transporting just 20 kids. So at that point, we're reaching out to the parents, and we're offering in lieu of.
okay. Now, with the schools, the non-pubs that we are not providing transport to, do we have any kind of involvement in, their first student contract? Do we have any kind of liabilities with them?
No, so they opt to select first student. They have to submit a letter to the state, telling the state that they're going to do that, and then that letter then comes to us, and then we're not obligated to provide transportation. Then the only other option that we have for not providing transportation is what Teresa described, is when we have very few students on the bus, we will rule them impractical to transport. We will bring that to the board for a vote as required by law, and then we'll inform those parents in those schools that we rule them impractical to transport, and this is how they can receive the in lieu of payment that they're entitled to.
Appreciate that. Any other questions, comments? Dr. Goodwin?
One final one. On the bus passes for the RTA, can students opt to use the app in lieu of the physical pass?
That's a good question. We're still trying to have a conversation with RTA to figure out how do we do that, right? Because you have to download the app on the phone.
Right.
So we haven't gotten to that part yet. We first identified how many students, we know how many passes, and the next level is to try to talk about how can we make that possible for some students who might want the app.
Right, because the app does a better job of reading a paper, since
Yes.
it tells you exactly when your bus is coming and when to get off.
Yes.
So, and it's less likely that they'll lose their phone than that thin piece of paper.
Correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I see there are none. I want to,
Could I make a comment?
yes, you may.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody that came out to visit my department and rode with my drivers. I would encourage you guys to come back out again. Our lot looks a lot different. When Mr. Sampson came out to visit, we had lots of buses. Those are all gone but 4, and we're waiting for people to come pick them up. All the terrible looks out there is like, it's amazing. There's no trash on my lot. Probably shouldn't say that. So somebody behind me back there, but there's no trash or anything. I would encourage you guys to come out and look. We've done a lot in a year, I feel, so. And I appreciate everything you guys have let me do in this past year. Thank you.
Thank you. We definitely appreciate you and your team. Next, pursuant to section 121.22G2 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Mr. President, are we going to talk about the bill schedule?
Oh. Do you have any questions about the bail schedule, Mr. Sampson?
I do. Thank you so much, Mr. President. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to ask 2. As relates to the tier and the explanation for the tiers, were neighborhood school centers not meeting their obligation under the old schedule of after-school programming of the 3 hours? Were they not meeting that?
Othello, you want to share?
I think we would have to go back and look at the old schedules and who had 21st century grants at the time. The reason for the like we said, the 2 o'clock, letting the students out at 2 o'clock is then they can get home at 5:30-ish if we have a bus that can pick them up after the last routing. So we do have some neighborhood school partners who've requested the earliest time available so they could do the 3 hours after school. We have started school as early as 7 o'clock before. Since 2017, I sent the old bus schedules to the president and vice president, so we can send it out to everybody if everybody wants to see it. But we have always started, when we've had a 3-tier, at 7, just different schools. We tried to make sure the neighborhood schools got it this time for the early start.
And, okay, I got that. I do have some concerns that we'll talk about later. 7 o'clock a.m. for elementary students is early for me, especially those young scholars that have to be on the bus, standing outside at 6 o'clock, 6:15. That is very concerning to me. Louise Troy, aren't they considered, they have a new community partner?
They do, but they don't have a 21st century grant yet.
So all of these schools listed under Tier 1 have 21st century grants?
Correct. And that's the required 3 hours after school.
Got it. All right. And then the last question for now about bail schedule. I do have a major concern of this Tier 2. 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we are now putting all of our high school students potentially downtown Dayton. Whether they're transferring to go home, if there are no LS routes, we are now potentially allowing all high school students to end up in downtown Dayton at some point of the morning and or day. That is very concerning to me. For those of us who live in the community, there are issues that are happening at Riverscape often. And now we are putting potentially our students with interaction with Dayton police, which isn't a bad thing. However, to put all high school students in the same area, potentially at the same time, is very, very concerning for me. And I don't know if that was thought about, but I did want to make that statement that I don't think it's very wise to put all high school students in the same area at the same time, where there are no restrictions of when they got to move, if they're paying for a bus pass, if they have a bus pass. You can't tell me I have to leave. And I do believe that is posing more problems in the warm months than we need to have, potentially. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Burton?
I'm
Or-
sorry.
I thought you were going to say something.
No,
Oh, okay. No, to follow up on that, my question is to follow up on that. Do we have any plans in place to have any SROs, any males of color, females of color, any kind of staff presence down at the hub?
In the past, when we've had a lot of hub activity, we've actually put SROs there to support the students getting on the next bus that they need to get on or changing their route. So I would anticipate that we would start off the year with that and see how everything goes. And then if we have to, we would continue through the year. But Chief Wright will work with us on that. And if we feel like we need, you got 4 there, 4 are scheduled there right now.
Okay, I definitely feel that Board Member Sampson raises a valid concern of having that congestion down there. Those are some of the things that we see that happen in our neighborhoods that then bleed over into our schools. So I definitely appreciate you raising that sentiment, Board Member Sampson. Are there any other questions from the board concerning bail schedules?
One more, Mr. President.
Board Member Sampson.
Thank you. So am I to assume that this bail schedule, since it's already been communicated, there are no opportunities for it to be tweaked? It is what it is. Is that is it safe to assume that this is what it is?
If we are going to have enough routes sufficient for the number of drivers that we have,
Okay.
then it is what it is. But remember, high schools, we're not transporting. So that would be a discussion for the board because we don't transport high schoolers.
Well, Mr. President, with that being stated, I would like to make a recommendation that we somehow extend or strengthen our truancy department. We currently have one coordinator and a social worker. Truancy could potentially become an issue, and we need to have individuals in place, in my opinion, who will advocate for our scholars and families when needs arise. One of the needs that I know, and this is a personal one for me, but we got to figure it out. I have two daughters that one goes to Rivers Edge, one goes to Stivers. And that is common across the district for parents that have multiple children, Stivers and Rivers Edge. It used to be we could drop my oldest daughter off at Stivers at 8:15, go over to Rivers Edge 15, 20 minutes later. Now both of my girls go to school at 9 o'clock. My wife and I have to be at school at work at 8:30. We're going to figure it out. But for those families in our community that are not going to figure it out, we need to have individuals in place who will be able to provide some layers of support. Because if I have to choose between making money to keep the lights on versus making sure my child gets to school on time, I'm choosing the first one. I really, since this is what it is, I am recommending that we need at least 5 to 6 truancy officers, because freshmen, and correct me if I'm wrong, that freshman population is challenging. And so now we are putting individuals on a bus who may have never ridden a bus, whose parents may have gone to work. High school can be a challenge, and to expect one individual to try to accommodate all of that, I think it's unfair, and I just believe we need to strengthen that truancy department. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir, and I will say I definitely agree with that. I'll ask Dr. Lally if you can give us a report on truancy and some of the ways that we can tackle some of these issues. I think that is going to be a big thing. Also, it was stated about the, and this is something that came back since we're still here on it, with the bell schedule for the international school, and we're talking about picking up those that are on the buses 30 minutes before school. And we know that other schools will be having the shuttle too as well. Is that the plan, or do we foresee needing to do that as well with some of our other schools? So are there any other schools that will be cutting out instructional time for the sake of transportation?
No.
Okay. And with that, are there any other thoughts of how we can work this international school, since this would be the only one, of how we can figure out this way to get them home safely without taking a chunk of, without them basically missing 2.5 hours a week of instructional time?
So the first thing we're going to do is, remember, we need drivers to do their dry runs, and then we need to say how many actual riders that we have. But it's not uncommon to have to change some routes based on enrollment, the withdrawals, and entry. We're constantly changing routes because we constantly have students enroll, we constantly have students withdraw. But we can definitely take that into consideration to look at what's the possibility, and then we'll have that discussion with the routers, and then I'll provide that information to Dr. Lally.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Any other questions, comments?
I have one final question.
Dr. Goodwine?
On our international schools, are our high school students in that school, are they going to be on the RTA, or are they going to be on the shuttle?
They will be RTA.
Okay.
We're not transporting any high school students.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? Now, if there are no further questions, pursuant to section 121.22G2 of the Ohio Revised Code, I move that this board go into executive session. This meeting is being held to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal of a public employee, as well as to prepare for and review negotiations with employees regarding their compensation or other terms in employment and conditions of their employment. Do I have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Sampson. Are there any questions on the motion? If none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson,
Yes.
Board Member Whit Gagne,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine, yes. Board Member Lacy,
Yes.
6 yeses.
Board, join me in the executive office in our conference room. Let the record show that the Board of Education of the Dayton City School District has just completed an executive session during which it considered the appointment, employment, dismissal of a public employee, and also met with the attorney involving pending or imminent court action, as well as prepare for and review negotiations with employees regarding their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Move that we exit executive session. Do I have a second?
Second?
It's been
Second.
moved in second. Are there any questions? There are no questions. May we have a roll call or a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson,
Yes.
Board Member Whit Gagne,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine, yes. Board Member Lacy,
Yes.
6 yeses.
All right, next for our superintendent recommendations.
Before you go to that, Board President Smith, can I make a recommendation, please?
Yes.
I do want to move that we accept and post a position for a school business manager and accept a resolution for the recreation of the position.
It has been moved. Do we have a second?
I second the motion, Mr. President.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the motion?
Question, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Sampson.
Thank you. Board Member Dr. Goodwine, with this position, can you state the rationale for the business manager, the posting of the business manager for the record for the public, please?
Yes. This position is being posted to really separate some of our financial operations. We're doing a lot of things with our athletic department, our operations, and we're having a lot of investments go out. And this would be a good opportunity to provide some assistance with both our superintendent and our treasurer in those roles. The goal of this position is really to see if there are individuals out there that can meet the necessary skill sets that we are looking for to really drive this district forward, not only increase our investments, but also increase our footprint out there. And we really just want to see our district grow in a way that we haven't seen before. This position historically has, I believe the last time it was here was in 2019 and exited in 2020, and it was a position that was under the superintendent. However, the statute allows us as board members to have a school business manager as well as an internal auditor. But at this moment in time, we just have a lot of investments that's going on that someone with a finance and educational background would be beneficial to this district.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwine. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Board Member Sampson. Thank you to Dr. Goodwine. Any other questions on the motion? Ms. Whit Gagne?
So I understand the resolution, and the resolution has that we have a job description attached. Is there a way that we can separate that job description, because we're still in the kind of fine-tuning stages of that, to reflect, our collaborative approach with our board and our superintendent, to make sure that we are aligning our resources to be the most effective and set us all up for success?
The job description also includes and gives us as the board the ability to continue to change it while it's posted. The reason that I have put both the resolution and the job description out at this moment is because I would like us to post and really cast a wide net to get good resumes in. I do agree that we should continue to tune this to what we need, but at this moment, I'm gonna leave my motion intact because it does, the job description on the last page is subject to change and states that no way does this imply that these are the only duties and responsibilities to be performed, which gives us the ability to change it as we see fit, as we do get anything back.
Can we also then attach our job description notes with the things that we're looking to update so that that is on the record as well?
You can in a separate motion. My motion is only for these two.
Okay. So how would I make that in a separate motion? I mean, we're going to vote on this motion first, but then I would make a separate motion?
You have to go down to the parliamentarian.
So with the motion, you could offer, Ms. Witt Gagne, you can offer a friendly amendment to the motion that is on the table, and Dr. Goodwine would have to accept your friendly amendment, and if she does, it will be added to her motion. If she doesn't, you could come back and create another motion.
So am I making a recommendation to amend at this point, or I wait until the vote?
Yes, you want to offer a friendly amendment to her motion.
I would like to offer an amendment to the motion to include the notes from our deeper discussions upstairs about what this position should and should not include.
Let me think about that first. Can you give me a little example of these notes?
I can say, just, trying to, because the making sure that the position is aligned with non-educational, there's some terms. I just want to make sure that we're aligning all of the responsibilities correctly, so.
I still need the actual notes.
Well, let's just say, item 4, reviews and approves expenditures for, just period, for assigned departments. I mean, there's some fine tuning to do.
I just want it from the record,
Well,
if you can pass it.
Can I give you all of these?
Which ones do you want me to add? Give me 1 second, please. Which else?
Well, I don't think,
It's a long thing, that's why.
it is a long thing. That's why I said I wanted to include this. I wanted to make an amendment to include these notes on the.
Okay, so I'll accept to include them with it, both documents.
So that has been included into the motion. Thank you, Mr. Parliamentarian. Are there any other questions on the motion or comments on the motion? I will say I do appreciate the motion. I appreciate the resolution. And in transparency, talking about it, what we're talking about is adding on a position that would deal with some of the non-instructional to not impede with the work that Dr. Lally has been doing with our district. We're talking about things around creating business plans at Welcome Stadium with the work that we're doing there, looking at some of the work that we're doing around our procurement and a lot of the issues that the district, well, not the district, but the board has been raising around making sure that we have minority participation as well. We're looking at ways to increase productivity, things like that. I appreciate the work that has been done in conversation. I appreciate Board Member Witt Gagne and her friendly amendment to really keep working on these things, and I appreciate just the work of the board to be forward-thinking in some of the work that we're talking about and how do we improve the things that we're doing without impeding some of the good things that we're doing. So this also would look at, this business manager would have transportation as well under it, and other duties, but working with our superintendent and with our treasurer in ways that would have clear lines of communication, clear lines of reporting structures to avoid any kind of chaos that we would not want to have. Also, I would want to say that in this, and correct me if I am wrong, Dr. Goodwine, in your motion, you are saying you want to post the position. It is not saying that you are saying we are filling the position at this time. It is to post the position to get prospective candidates. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Goodwine. Any other comments? Board Member Lacy.
And I'll just say briefly that in my last term as a board member, we did hire a third report to the board, and that was our internal auditor who reported directly to the board. And I do remember that was one of our most successful appointments during my 3 previous terms as a board member. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can get with this post. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Any further comments?
I know I had it off.
Any further comments or questions? If not, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes?
Board Member Sampson,
Abstain.
Board Member Whit Gagne,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Pickett,
No.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine, yes. Board Member Lacy.
Yes.
4 yeses, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Thank you. 4 yeses, 1 noes, 1 abstention. Resolution passes. Next, we'll go to our recommendations. Dr. Lally, please.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'm going to ask to be excused. I will review on my own.
You may be excused, sir. Dr. Lally, your recommendations, please.
The first recommendation for review is the Human Resources Agenda, and that is there for you to review and to see. There's also 2 people on the after July 10th DEA Human Resources that you would be voting on next week. So we are happy to answer any questions that you might have about anybody on the agenda or any position on the agenda.
Are there any questions for Dr. Lally? Just one quick question, Dr. Lally. With these, just real quickly, where are we at as we get ready to start school next month?
I'll ask Chief Harmon. He has a pretty succinct report for you to come up and tell you the numbers.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, as always. We are in looking at, this is the first month I'm able to give you a comparison of year over year. So as compared to end of July in 2021 and the end of July in 2022, we do have about 57 more positions open at this same point than we did a year ago, but also 42 of them are, 23 of them are additional positions from the international school, so it's relatively comparable. 16 positions were hired or offered today, so the numbers that I have are, we hope to be actually better today than, well, tomorrow when we start getting some accepted offers than what they were earlier today. Biggest areas of need, we still have 70 teaching positions across the district to hire. Again, let's see, 10 offers in the teaching category went out today, so hopefully, obviously, we have a bunch of those say yes. We are bringing back some of the long-term substitutes, which I know has been a question that the board has asked in the last several months. So some of those folks are starting to get their job offers to come back next year as well. Trying to think in some of the other categories, there are 10 clericals left in the district to be hired, 12 administrative positions across the district. That's 1 athletic director, a digital marketing specialist, truancy grounds coordinator, OTPT director, a few things like that. We have 3 part-time academic coordinators that are still being hired, and then there are, in the operations side of the house, approximately 30 positions still open, 12 custodians, 11 building food service preparation folks, 1 truck driver, 1 sheet metal worker, a preventative maintenance person, 3 grounds people, and an electronic person. We have started doing walk-in interviews on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we've hired people in those events, and so that's something it's a new thing that we've started doing this year that has been pretty successful for us so far. Stacy talked to you a little bit earlier about, I had international school update, but she kind of hit on some of that as well. So there are 6 teacher vacancies, 14 staffed already. 5 of those were internal movements and 9 were new hires from outside the district. And then there are 14 additional staff members that have also been hired for that. That's new arrival specialists, clericals, teacher leaders, intervention specialists, et cetera. And that leaves 13 vacancies, 7 of which are not teachers. That includes SRO, food service, custodian, clerical. I think that's kind of the overview, unless you have questions.
I just want to kind of see where we were. I appreciate that, and I appreciate I drive down, what's that, 5th Street daily, and I see those big signs out about the walk-in interview, so I really appreciate that effort.
I want to say too, that was kind of a shot in the dark, and it has been successful. We hired a chemistry teacher just last week, and that's a very hard position to fill. And this gentleman just walked in and said, "Hey, I saw your sign," and he wowed us. So, yeah, definitely worth what the cost to print the signs.
Appreciate it. Any other questions? I think you're good, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next recommendation, Dr. Lawler.
Next item for review are the contracts. You'll notice on the contracts, all of our neighborhood school centers are on here for their review. They are the same ones that we've had in the past, but they also include a new one with the Grace United Methodist Church. They will be partners with Louise Troy Elementary School, and the others are the same as we've had in the past in the last couple of years. You'll see some University of Dayton contracts on here. Those are for non-public schools, so those contracts would have to be voted on as well next week.
Any questions? If there are no questions over contracts, can you go to your next recommendation, Dr. Lawler?
The next recommendation is to hire Dr. Nikki Newton from Newton Education Solutions. She is the consultant that we used with our double teaching math teachers this past year, and I believe that the work that she did with our teachers was partially responsible for the grade increase that we saw in our math scores. She will also, this coming year, be working with 4th grade through 6th grade, as well as continuing to work with our 1st grade through 3rd grade. So we're excited about that. This is a curriculum contract and comes out of one of our grants.
Okay, I appreciate that. And so with her moving up to 4th and 6th as well, we don't anticipate any drops in 1st through 3rd, do we?
Any drops from?
With the work that she's able to do
No,
with
no.
PD?
No, she'll be doing the double teaching math, and then she'll start working with the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade math teachers in all buildings as well. That's why her contract's a little bit
I was
more
gonna say,
extensive.
that's why it's a larger contract than,
Than it was before.
appreciate that. Definitely don't want that work to stop. Any other questions? If there are none, we can go to your next recommendation.
The next recommendation is a memorandum of understanding identifying and naming the neighborhood school centers for the school year '23. We approved their contract first because we do provide $50,000 to each of them to help support their programming, and they provide the rest. This is just a standard MOU that we have them sign and that we sign each year.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that they do in partnering with us. Are there any questions? I see no questions. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lawler.
I recommend the approval of I'll be recommending an approval of a resolution regarding reimbursement to parents. This would be for transportation, and you'll see that anyone that's declared to be impractical to transport to a non-public school, we would pay the parent for that. And there are some families that would be receiving this after they apply for it.
Okay, any questions from the board? See no questions? See no questions. Next recommendation, Dr. Lawler.
The next recommendation that you would be voting on next week is a resolution for an administrator salary scale. In the past, we had a full-time music coordinator and a 170-day, I believe, coordinator. And Dr. Say left the district, so we are replacing him with a part-time 178-day academic coordinator, who will focus on bands and choirs 7 through 12. And we didn't have a salary schedule for 178 days, so that's why we need to create one.
I appreciate that. And is that the goal to really, with this coordinator, do you have any goals in mind about what we want to have with our bands over the next year?
We are working on and keeping our fingers crossed that we'll be able to have a marching band of some sort for our football games at some point during this school year. Our band directors are working with that. With this person's expertise, we're hopeful that she'll be able to really propel that forward. We've talked, I've also had some conversation with some board members about a potential consultant coming in and working, but we're waiting until this person comes August 1st before we start looking at that for her to use a consultant to help her with the band program. But we have some great potential with we've hired some adjuncts for our band program and our high school choir programs, just like they have at Stivers. We've hired them for all of our other buildings as well. So we have some great hopes for the band program and the choir program.
Appreciate hearing that. Any other questions from the board?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Lawley, I see this is a part-time. How would this position be affected if the coordinator wants to do like summer band camps, lessons during the summer? Will they have to have another contract to turn into full-time?
It would be a supplemental contract that we would provide. And at some point, if she wants to become full-time, we could have that conversation because it was a full-time position before.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lawley. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. Any other questions? If there are none, your next recommendation, Dr. Lawley?
We have some very good news. The next two resolutions that you would be voting on are negotiations conclusions for our clericals, OPSI Local 158, and then also our paraprofessionals, OPSI Local 643. These are their new contracts that you would be voting on and approving hopefully next week. I'd like to thank the negotiations team I know Chief Harmon and our school attorneys have helped with these and helped getting them resolved.
Yeah, definitely want to thank them again, echoing that, and I also want to thank our clericals and our paraprofessionals for the work that they
Yes.
do each and every day for our children. Any questions, comments from the board? I see none. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lawley.
My last recommendation would be a resolution to reject a referee statement and approve the termination of the person listed here. And there's executive content for the board to review at your leisure.
Okay. Let the board note of the executive content. Make sure we review that in advance of next week's meeting. Dr. Lawley, did you go over recommendation I that you had?
Oh, I apologize. I skipped that one. There's a recommendation for a settlement agreement with a person listed in executive content. And this, again, was one of the situations, if you take a look, it's a situation that's been, we've been working on with this group for a while.
Appreciate that, and I'll ask the board as well to view the executive content on recommendation I. Does that conclude your recommendation, Dr. Lawley?
Yes, Mr. President, it does.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Next, our treasurer's recommendations. Our treasurer has still been out, but in her place, as we always like to see come to the podium, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you.
How you doing today, sir?
Good, how are you?
I'm here.
Yeah, same over here.
Still.
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. The first recommendation we have is monthly financials. We went over the financials with our finance committee last Thursday. Brief synopsis is our revenues were better than expected. To the 5-year forecast, the expenditures were less. So our general fund balance is better than what was expected. So that's good news.
That's good news.
Any questions?
Any other questions? We have no questions. You told us what we wanted to hear with that. And I think Mr. Lacy will give an update from the Finance Committee next week as well, too. So I
Okay.
appreciate that. Your next recommendation?
My second recommendation is for approval of minutes for June 6th, 14th, 21st, and 28th meetings, and the June 21st record retention meeting.
I think there are no questions on that. No question on that. Your next recommendation?
The next recommendation is for approval of donations. It's loading up. I think we have one donation for $2,500 from MV Commercial Construction LLC.
Like always, we want to appreciate anyone that donates to our district. It is greatly appreciated and definitely goes towards the work that we are all trying to do for our children. Next recommendation, please.
The next recommendation is for approval of purchase acquisitions. Does anyone have any questions on any of them?
There are a number of purchase requisitions on here. I'd like the board to note them. Also, we appreciate, as always, we can see where the funds come from. And then also we have if there are any questions that you do not have for right now, please make sure we ask those and reach out to the superintendent or treasurer so they can reach out to the proper person to answer those questions. Do we have any questions from the board right now about purchase requisitions?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir, Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Quick question. I just lost it. Nope, I just lost it again. Can somebody explain to me ALC Schools, LLC, it says Alternative Transportation for District Students. What is that?
I think Dr. Burton's coming up to answer it.
All right.
That's the transportation service that we outsource for students that are not, we have to transport outside of our district. So we have special ed students that have to go to Cincinnati, they have to go to Columbus. We have special ed students that cannot ride a bus per their IEP, and so that's the organization that we contract to provide that specialized transportation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Sampson. Any other questions? I see none. Your next recommendation, sir.
Okay, our last recommendation is for approval of then and nows. There are a couple of then and now certificate that needs your approval.
Let the board note the then and nows. There are two of them on there. Once again, if you have any questions that you do not think of now, please make sure you reach out and ask about those. Do we have any questions at the current junction? See, we do not.
And that concludes our recommendations.
Did a spot-on job, like always. Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
And with that, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
It has been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved in second. I see no questions on it. May we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Board Member Sampson,
Yes.
Board Member Whit Gaye,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Goodwine, yes. 5 yeses.
Meeting adjourned.